Tensions between the U.S. and China are rising after a series of increased tariffs last week. To break it down, we turn to Justin with this week's Money Minute.
Thanks, Joey. Since President Trump took office, one of his main goals has been to help curb the U.S. trade deficit, and specifically that with China. Up until this point, there has been little success, with the deficit over $500 billion with China alone. To help address this, last week Trump raised tariffs from 10 to 25% on 40%, or $200 billion, of Chinese imports. China responded in a similar light, raising tariffs to 25% on $60 billion worth of American goods. The stock market was affected too, with the Dow dropping 600 points on Monday. And with that, I'd like to welcome our panel, Cameron Peters of College Democrats and Edmund Bannister of the NU Political Union. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you.
All right, now there's a lot of numbers and technical jargon here, but what it essentially boils down to is this. Trump thinks that the U.S. has been manipulated by China due to unfair trade agreements and shady practices overseas. So his solution was to smack tariffs on Chinese imports, and he says this results in China paying the U.S. billions of dollars. But in reality, the burden of a tariff is actually put on the American importers, effectively working as a tax. Do you think Trump actually knows what he's doing here with trade?
In terms of the tariff, no, absolutely not. There was an Axios story, I think, earlier today. Chuck Grassley, I believe, said that Trump views that understanding that tariffs are going straight into the U.S. pockets as an item of theology. So maybe there's something to his broader strategy, but in terms of the actual functioning of tariffs, it's pretty clear he has no idea how that works.
I mean, I have a slightly different take on it. You know, I definitely think that ultimately the costs of tariffs are going to be put on on U.S. consumers or the companies that are selling to those consumers. That being said, I do think that there are serious problems with the U.S.-China trade relationship that Trump has correctly identified. A problem with intellectual property theft, a problem with unfair trade practices flooding the market with cheap goods. I think that these are problems that need to be addressed, and the Trump administration has made an assessment that it's better to try to have this fight now than in 10 years down the road when the China-U.S. trade relationship will be more advantageous towards them.
But are they fighting it in the right way? Because it seems that right when the U.S. raises its tariff, China just responds, so it just escalates into a way that discourages trade altogether. How should it be done?
I think ultimately it depends on whether there is a deal signed. It seemed like they were really close to a deal this weekend, but now it seems like they're drifting away from it. Stocks crashed on Monday. They recovered a little bit today. So ultimately, it really depends on whether the negotiators in the room can reach something fruitful before the economic damage from the tariff fight gets too out of control.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Trump is really just kind of trying to stare China down, hope they blink, hope that we inflict more damage on their economy than Chinese tariffs can inflict on ours. Last I checked, the trade talks are stalled, but I think Robert Lighthizer and Steve Mnuchin will be in Beijing soon. We don't know exactly when yet or exactly what they're going to be doing, but hopefully things will resume shortly and we'll be able to see some action on that, because I think Edmund's exactly right about his assessment.
So the president is also reportedly considering placing a tariff on all Chinese goods. What would that action do in escalating these tensions?
I think it would be pretty foolhardy. There are some goods we get from China, specifically rare earth metals, pharmaceuticals, that really American consumers need, and they need them at their current price points. So the idea of putting tariffs on those is particularly daunting. Putting tariffs on maybe like textile imports, something like that, might not have a huge impact on the average person. But I think definitely the Trump administration needs to be careful on where it's putting its tariffs and how much they're actually putting on, because they don't want to be disproportionate in their response to what the Chinese are doing, and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the latest package proposed by the U.S. Trade Representative, pharmaceuticals and rare earth metals are currently exempted, but it's $300 billion, which is almost everything else. It is important that those remain exempted for the reasons Edmund said, but I think they need to be careful, because if you kind of continue this game of brinkmanship, that's going to start having a lot more of an impact on U.S. consumers and farmers in particular, which is a really important voting bloc for Trump. So he could start harming his re-election chances potentially, depending on how this all pans out.
All right, thanks so much, gentlemen. We'll have to leave it there, but we'll be back with more Politicat after this.